This is Margaret from the blog Don't Call It Bollywood, and I wanted to do a video to talk about Padmavat and the release date it has now chosen, Republic Day, and sort of the bigger meaning of this choice and a series of other choices that the Padmavat filmmakers have made over time. I'm going to start at the end with the recent announcement that Padmavat will be releasing on the same day as Padman on Republic Day. Now, this was going to be a 3-film weekend, Padmavat, Padman, and Ayari, but Ayari was able to, thankfully, move a few weeks out, so now it's just a 2-film weekend. But it's 2 major films. What bothers me about this is the Padmavat producers did not have to pick this day. They could have picked any other day, and ultimately they would have had a better run, and so would Padman. But more importantly, the whole winter several months would have a better look to them. Let me back up a bit and go back to the last thing that happened. Padmavat was supposed to come out December 1st. That was the plan. That was what was announced. And they stuck with that date for a really long time, even knowing that their topic was probably going to be controversial, that they were submitting to the censor board at the last minute, essentially, which is not unheard of, but is kind of foolish for a large, possibly controversial film like this. For comparison, I looked it up. Jab Hari Met Sejal was concerned about its sexual content, which is much less likely to cause censor issues than political content, as Padmavat has. And they submitted to the censor board a full 3 weeks before the film's release date, and were approved 2 weeks before the film's release date. And they specifically said they did it like that because they wanted some time to be able to make any cuts that were suggested and to make sure that the film would still work. And just generally, they were aware that there might be some bargaining and back and forth in order to get the film they wanted out. And so they sent it into the censor board early, and that was just part of their plan for their schedule. Padmavat apparently was sent in very late, along with filming delays that have happened consistently throughout. Things like Shahid Kapoor had a baby and took a month off and stuff like that. There were a lot of reasons to think they may not be able to hold that December 1st date, and they don't seem to have done absolutely everything they could to make sure that they could hold that December 1st date. So a lot of people are focusing on how this is damaging Padmavat by losing December 1st, by all this other stuff happening. But I think what's missing is the bigger picture of the effect this is having on the entire film industry. If Padmavat had been less firm about taking that December 1st date, the entire fall would have had a different look to it. For example, Gomal Again and Secret Superstar ended up splitting Diwali, which was kind of okay. They both found an audience. Secret Superstar wasn't that big of a release anyway. But Gomal Again turned into a bigger hit than people were expecting. If there had been no Padmavat on December 1st, most likely Gomal Again would have released alone on Diwali at the end of October. In mid-November, we would have had Tumhari Sulu and the smaller films that we already had. And then December 1st, instead of Padmavat, we would have had Secret Superstar. It would be another smaller release, but still an Amir Khan film. And it would have had a nice longer run by itself instead of being crunched in with Gomal Again. And then Tiger Zinda Hai, instead of releasing December 22nd right before Christmas, could have released December 15th, giving it a slightly longer run through the Christmas holidays and through the end of 2016. Finally, if Tiger Zinda Hai moved back, in the beginning of January, you could have seen Ayari coming out this weekend, this somewhat empty weekend. Saif's new film is coming out, but it's a black comedy of the type that everyone knows isn't going to be a massive hit. Ayari would have been a nice mix with it, a black comedy and a straightforward action thriller type film. And then Republic Day, Ayari and Saif's movie could have a nice 2-week run, and then Republic Day, we could have Padman, which was always supposed to be a Republic Day release. Akshay is very good at Republic Day releases and very good at Independence Day releases. He does nice films with nice India is good, here's what we can do messages that you can go and see on your day off with your kids and your family. They're not necessarily something you're going to come back to and watch over and over and over again. They're not the most spectacular films of the year, but they're nice, solid releases that are going to fill the theaters the way they're supposed to be filled on Republic Day. And now we have Padmavat. which is throwing off this entire schedule. Ayari has moved somewhere off into the far distance. Tiger Zindahay already took the very end of the month, thinking Padmavat would take the rest of it, which meant we had this massive 8-week period with no major film release, which is almost unheard of, and a terrible thing to do in that end-of-the-year holiday season. And we had Secret Superstar and Gomal again, sharing screens. We had all of this stuff happening to carefully make space for Padmavat, space that Padmavat must have somewhere always known it may not end up taking. Now, I've been as generous as possible in looking at how this happened and in assuming that it's not the fault of the Padmavat producers. But this final decision to take that Republic Day slot, thereby essentially ruining the entire winter schedule for films, that's a really selfish decision, which makes me look back at their other decisions and wonder about them. This storyline was always going to be controversial. I had people telling me it was going to be controversial as soon as it was announced. And I don't talk to that many people. So if my tiny sample size was already saying, ooh, I don't think they should be making this movie, surely someone involved had similarly told the producers and the director that they shouldn't be making this movie. I'm not talking about censorship or anything like that. I'm just saying if someone says people aren't going to like your movie, maybe don't spend all the money in the world on it and give it a massive release. Maybe accept that this is a story which will not find a large audience. I mean, I'd say the same if somebody were making, I don't know, Lolita. You don't want to do a massive, big budget Lolita because a large part of the audience is not going to like it. You want to do a small, interesting one and target it at the audience that would enjoy it. So Bhansali, the producers, they must have known that this is a story that people find troublesome in many different ways. And yet they went ahead and threw enormous amounts of money at it and continued as though they had no expectation that it would cause controversy. In the same way, they released the trailer and started the promotional campaign while knowing they had not yet gotten a censorship certificate and had not made any attempt, so far as I have seen, to try to diffuse the inevitable controversy that was going to arise. There was no historian ready to speak up on their behalf. They hadn't signed a bunch of PR people to go out and spin things. It was all just sort of Bhansali out there by himself and Deepika giving statements. There was no greater plan for how to handle things. And the way it was handled was not in a way that kept the issue contained. Again, I know a lot of this is not up to them. They're not the ones who caused the problem. But if you could predict that there was going to be a problem, surely you could have prepared a little better for it. I'm comparing it with, for instance, A Dil Hai Mushkil, which was not the same. That was a local group that was raising the issue, not national, but it quickly spun into a national, and it could have spun into an industry-wide issue. A Dil Hai Mushkil was the big release for Diwali that year. It had to come out or else the whole fall schedule would be messed up. But there was another even bigger movie coming out in a few months, Race, which also had a Pakistani actor, which was the objection to A Dil Hai Mushkil. The problem would be if A Dil Hai Mushkil was delayed, that would be a big problem. If Race for some reason could not come out, that would be a massive problem. And when I say problem, I'm not talking about a PR issue or some abstract, the stars will lose face kind of thing. I'm talking about the theater owners and the people working in movie theaters throughout the world. I used to be one of them, so I'm always very aware of how these issues affect them. If A Dil Hai Mushkil did not come out on Diwali, the audience would find something else to watch, most likely a Hollywood movie. But the theater owners would not have anything else. They would have given up screens to A Dil Hai Mushkil. They would have nothing to play on those screens. They would lose tons of money. And the way the movie theater business works, you don't count on, well, this week was bad, next week will be good. It's 4 movies a year that are your profit drivers. And if you lose one of them, you're losing a quarter of your profits, which is enough for you to go out of business. That's a big deal. If A Dil Hai Mushkil did not come out, that would have been one of those quarter of their profits drops. If Race had not come out, that would have been a third or a half of their profits for some of these theaters. That would be a massive problem. And then you can expand up. So the theater owners would have huge issues The local distributors would have huge issues. The state distributors would have huge issues, all the way up until you're talking about the entire Bombay film industry, which employs thousands of people, all of whom are counting on those 4 annual major hits. And so, when Eid al-Mushkil ran into problems, Karan Johar ran around and did everything he could to make sure it came out. He talked to the Film and Television Producers Association, which is the legitimate industry group. That's the one that always serves as their spokesperson and advocate. And they went and spoke to the chief minister of the state, and there was many things done on the back end to make sure things went smoothly. And finally, Karan spoke to the people who were objecting and gave them what they wanted, which was essentially an apology video. It was, I'm sure, very painful and unpleasant for Karan himself, but he did what he had to make sure his movie came out. The whole annual schedule and industry of film stayed in place, and he was protecting future films from going through the same problems he did. This is the standard policy. If a controversy comes up, you do everything you can to contain it, to keep it to one person if possible, and if not, to keep it to one film and make sure it doesn't affect anything else. The way the Padmavat controversy was handled, it doesn't seem like that was the plan. I may be missing something. Certainly Bansali was out giving statements and making videos and so on, but there seemed to be a tone of making this a free speech issue, forcing this to become an issue for the entire film industry instead of containing it to just the one movie. In fact, the only person I saw out there who was dancing around trying to make sure that the schedule stayed resembling something that would let people make money and, not lose everything and live on the streets was Prashan Joshi, the head of the censor board. He was the one running around trying to move films up and move things back and forth to make sure that everything would happen as it was supposed to happen. The actual people who were creating this issue, the Padmavat team, I'm not seeing them do as much of that. I wasn't seeing them talk to the Indian Film and Television Producers Association, who are the people you're supposed to talk to. Even Shahid Kapoor and Ranveer Singh, the stars of the film, didn't necessarily come out and make statements. Here's a weird thing. Shahid Kapoor, in the middle of all of this, ran into Siddharth Roy Kapoor at the airport. Siddharth is the head of the Indian Film and Television Producers Association, who is supposed to be helping them with this. And neither Shahid or Siddharth made any comment about any of this issue. They just said hey and went about their day. That's how divorced they felt from what was happening. It's a very odd situation. Somehow the entire film industry is being drawn into this against their will and is doing everything they can to stay out of it. The only time that people did join in was when the threats were made specifically to Deepika Padukone. And in that case, there was an almost unanimous statement of support for Deepika and an anti-violence stance. That is something that's been fairly consistent. If there's a personal threat of violence of that level, the film industry does stand together. But if it is merely a political controversy or a censorship issue, the expectation is you will follow the correct paths, but you will try to contain the damage and keep it to your own film as much as possible. And that does not seem to have happened in this case. Again, I was reserving judgment. This is just my impression. I haven't been following every single detail every single day all the time because it's overwhelming. But what makes me think this impression might be correct is the decision to release it on Republic Day. This was a decision that apparently was not taken after talking with theater owners, after talking with the Padman producers, after talking with anyone else in the industry. It was taken as though Padmavat was the only thing in the universe. There was no concern for how it fits within the greater fabric of a community, of an industry, of a society. It was just a thought of what is the soonest, biggest date we can release this thing and make our money. There's so many ways this date is a bad choice. It destroys Padman in many ways. There have already been quotes from theater owners saying they were planning to give every screen to Padman. They don't know what to do at this point. Should they split their screens? Should they pick one or the other? What's happening? Padman is struggling. There was an anonymous quote I saw with people going, literally, this is insane. I don't know what to do. They're desperately trying to talk to the Padmavat producers and get this rearranged. And on the other side of things, there's the theater owners who are struggling. There's the audience who doesn't know what to do now. And there's the greater schedule of the spring. We now have no big movie coming out until March or April. It would have been the perfect time for Padmavat to slide in there. February, March, anytime. It is such a big story now, and it was already such a big movie that it could release any day at once and get as much audience as it would have ever gotten. There's no need to wait for a holiday. You might even want to avoid a holiday. Let things die down a little. Let people be a little less excitable and just release on a normal weekend. I saw a quote, the Goa police, for instance, is a little nervous about them releasing on the holiday weekend because this is going to be a law and order issue, partly because they're releasing so soon instead of waiting for things to die down. And the Goa police are going to be overwhelmed because it is a holiday weekend. This is just a small problem, but it's the kind of thing that you're supposed to know if you're a movie producer, that you're supposed to be thinking about. All of the various things that might fit in, that might cause an issue, that might lower your profits, that might lower other people's profits. And no one seems to be thinking about these things. There's just this rush to get it out. And it doesn't make any sense to me. Now, I'm recording this video and it won't be posted for a while and things are changing so rapidly. It's highly possible that it will have moved to a different date by the time the video goes up, in which case, great. However, in many ways, the damage has already been done. Even if it does eventually move, you already had the theater owners trying to figure things out. Ayari already moved to February to make space just once there was a hint of a rumor of this change happening. And this is, again, kind of inconsiderate. If you're not 100% positive that you're taking this date, don't announce it because everyone's going to have to rearrange their schedule for you. Even if ultimately it would be better for them to move off of this date, if they were going to move off, then they shouldn't have announced it. If they're not going to move off, well, then it's just a terrible idea that's being very selfish and short-sighted. I just don't understand what's going on with the production of this film. The only thing that makes sense to me, actually, it's being primarily funded by Viacom and Paramount, who are actually the same company. Viacom is the parent group for Paramount. Paramount is releasing a film in late February that would hit the exact same audience as Padmavat. Big visuals, big action, etc., etc., etc. And I'm almost thinking, are they releasing Padmavat in January, thereby destroying the entire winter schedule for the Hindi film industry, so that by the time their film comes out in February, the theaters and the audience will have no choice but to watch a Hollywood movie? Because that's kind of the only logical explanation I can come up with for what's happening. Anyway, you can agree with me, you can disagree with me, I expect you to disagree with me. You can leave me a comment on my blog, there's a link right below. I'd love to talk with you there. Thanks!